So I'd like to introduce you to Neil Furr from Wealth Wizards. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran, and thank you, Intelliflo, for the opportunity to showcase the combined power of Intelligent Office and Wealth Wizards RoboParaplanner. So hopefully in the next 10 minutes or so, I can give you a good flavor of why the I/O API is so powerful, and actually why APIs in general are the kind of new way of joining what were previously disparate pieces of software. But before I do that, let's just remind ourselves what is RoboParaplanner. This is software for the advice business, to power up the advice business, and it's designed to handle those complex advice cases, such as at retirement and DB transfer cases. It starts with a fact find. This is a complex and in-depth fact find bespoke for the particular advice case that you're dealing with. So it's dynamically adapting to the circumstances of your client and making sure that you've got all the facts you need for the case in point, but none of the facts that you don't need, so just the facts you need. That then goes into our AI-powered solution mapping, which is where we weigh up the soft facts, the hard facts, and determine the right outcome for your clients. And finally, that's all then written up in a fully personalized suitability letter, which is in Microsoft Word format, so that the advisor can then still tailor it if necessary to their particular client's needs. So that sounds all well and good, right? The only thing is, you guys are all using Intelliflo, so I guess we don't complete the picture unless it works seamlessly with Intelliflo. And that's where the API comes in, and that's what I'm going to try and explain to you in a little bit today. Before I do that, let's just remind ourselves, before the idea of an open API, how was the world? So I'm going to ask Kieran to just role play an advice firm that's interested in RoboParaplanner, and I think the conversation might go something like this.
So we'd like RoboPlanner, but would we have to rekey all the fact find data again and again from I/O?
Well, of course, no, not if we do an integration with I/O.
That sounds good. When can we have it?
Ooh, well, that depends. I think I'm going to have to set up a meeting with Intelliflo. There's probably going to be some kind of joint integration project. We're going to have to figure out a unique way of moving the data between Intelliflo and Wealth Wizards. And of course, that's not going to be easy. That's going to take some costs on both sides, and we're going to have to figure out when we can fit that into our schedule. Does it sound familiar? Yeah, I mean, this is how it used to be not so long ago, right? Obviously, this is not how it is today. So, integrating with I/O's open API, and this is true of any open API ecosystem, Intelliflo have done their half of that integration project that I previously talked about. So they've already done, in a do it once for everyone way, they've already produced a standard-based API interface that all developers understand. That means there's no bespoke development from Intelliflo for us to integrate with them. All that we need is our own engineers to, in a self-service way, to consume the documentation, the standards and the capabilities of the I/O API in order to build our integration. The features of the API that we're using are the single sign-on capability. So that means that if you're already signed into Intelliflo, you don't need to sign in again to Wealth Wizards. We're extracting fact-find data, as you've heard a number of other partners doing. And importantly, at the end of the process, we're putting all the relevant case documents back into I/O. Significantly, as an I/O customer, RoboParaplanner is available directly from the advisor workplace. So let's take a look at this in action. You guys all use Intelliflo, so hopefully this screen is familiar. You've opened up a client area within Intelliflo, and let's say we're on Joe Blogs here, and on the client actions area, you've now got under I/O store apps RoboParaplanner because you've subscribed to this service on the I/O store. Clicking on that link takes you immediately into the Wealth Wizards Create Fact Find screen. Notice that Joe Bloggs' details have already come across, and as I mentioned, you didn't need to sign in again to the Wealth Wizards environment because we use a single sign-on capability. Having confirmed and created that new fact find, you're then into the full fact find that I described earlier. Over on the left-hand side are the various sections of the fact find, and the icons, green and amber, are indicating those areas of the fact find that are complete and those that still require further data. So let's take a look at some of those examples. Clearly, we would expect to be bringing pension data across, and in this case, we have an occupational pension and a standard life pension. But perhaps not all of the pensions were in IO at this point, and perhaps as part of your fact-finding process, you need to add other previous pensions that you discover in that process, including DB pensions. Assuming these pensions are here, similarly, there may be information that you need to complete in order to provide sufficient information for our algorithm. So whereas the basic data may have come across, there may be other information, such as guarantees or special benefits of a particular pension, that are not included, and therefore you need to add them here. In another example, the property and the outstanding mortgage, you would probably expect that to be coming across from IO. But to consider an example where you probably wouldn't see that is the retirement priority section. This is where we're establishing the soft facts around whether a client should transfer out of their, should do something that has a guaranteed income or something that has a more flexible drawdown arrangement. So we're using these soft facts as part of our algorithm to determine the right outcome. Assuming you've gone through all of this process and you've completed the fact find, everything's green now on the left-hand side, you're now ready to generate the advice for this particular case. This is where the magic happens. Behind the scenes, the work that would previously be hours of Paraplanner time, getting quotes from annuity quotes, looking at your advice policy, deciding how to do all of that. Under the covers, we're going out to RS Exchange. We're getting various annuity quotes for various levels of benefit with an annuity. We're comparing that to a sustainable drawdown income from our algorithm. And in this case, we're coming out with an outcome that says that the client should take a level 2 drawdown arrangement with the associated risk profile and so on associated with that. Notice on the left-hand side here, the alerts. So this is where the algorithm is flagging that there may be particular nuanced aspects of this case where you want to take a look. So for example, if there's a seeding pension with an early access charge, maybe that wasn't dealt with completely in our algorithm. We'd like the advisor to take a look at that and take a view as to whether the advice can go as it stands or whether they need to make a change. As per other demonstrations you've seen, we have a solution timeline. And also in this area, the advisor can look at other options in terms of different levels of drawdown or the various annuity quotes that are associated with this particular case. But assuming that they want to proceed with the solution that our algorithm has determined, they would then proceed to generate the documents. At this point, we're going to generate the Word suitability letter that I described earlier, but also various documents for the compliance file, the statement of fact, and all the kind of under the covers workings that explain the case and why we went for the solution we did. At the point that you generate those documents, they're immediately available back in IO. And if you're a PFP user, then of course you would be able to release these to the client, or you would be able to take the Word document, amend it, and then put it back, and then release it to the client. So I hope that's given you a sense of how an integration might work. You've seen that we started out in IO, we started out in the client area of IO, we moved the data into Wealth Wizards RoboParaplanner. We did the heavy lifting of a complex piece of advice, maybe taking something that would have otherwise taken 20 hours of elapsed time down to something like 2 hours. We produced all the documentation necessary for the case, and then we put that back in IO so that IO remains your single source of truth. So on that note, I'm going to hand back to Kieran. I hope that's been a useful introduction to IO's API, and over to you, Kieran.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you.